Good evening and welcome to Plain Talk. In September, we've dealt with lots of issues, literature, education, Amerindian affairs. Parliament is soon to resume after a 2-month break. And I thought that this might be a good time to reintroduce the question of politics and Parliament. And who better to do that with than Mr. Hamley Case, Ms. Clarissa Riehl, a former member of Parliament, still, I believe, a member of the PNC, Mr. Aubrey Norton, member of Parliament, member of the PNC. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Plain Talk. How do you rate the 10 Parliament so far? Parliament came after the November 28 elections. I think they met for the first time immediately in January 2012. How would you rate them?
I found it extremely, or I should say, I'd find it, we're still in the 10th Parliament, aren't we?
Yes, we are.
Okay, I find it extremely disappointing from several aspects. To begin with, I was particularly disappointed when the President made it clear and made it public that he's unwilling to assent to any bills that are piloted by the opposition. To me, that is another way of saying that he's not interested in the will of the people. And I find that very disturbing, and to me it is indicative of problems to come.
Ms. Riehl?
Sheriff, what Hamley says, it's true in a way, but I find that a lot of what happens in Parliament, at least if you take your cue from other countries, democratic countries, that is, not authoritarian ones, but democratic ones, and we still tout ourselves as being a democratic country. A lot of these things have to go on before you reach the Parliament. So even though the President might come out and make that statement, I think there's scope still for trade-offs. So you go, and so there's supposed to be a lot of activity between the leader of the opposition and the President. Even if the President says he doesn't want to meet, you call him, bother him, badger him, whatever it is, and ensure that you have some rapprochement and that you push to get issues and do trade-offs. I think that is what happens in a lot of countries. Right now, we know what's happening in the U.S. The country is going again on the brink of not being able to pay its bills,
the shutdown
and all of
debt
that.
ceiling, yes.
But so there'll have to be something which the President Obama will have to do, to engage the Republicans to be able to get. You have to give something, and you have to, as I said, trade-offs. I think that will help a lot in our
Mr. Norton,
society.
and does it take two to do that?
Well, first of all, I think Ghana has a parliament. This is the first time it has a parliament in which the government isn't the majority. And unfortunately, the government doesn't necessarily believe in majoritarian rule. When they had the majority, they were comfortable and they thought automatically they will have a majority. For the first time, they are without a majority. And it brings out clearly that they are not interested in a very important element of parliamentary democracy, where you discuss, you disagree, you agree, and you come to a compromise position. They're still in the old approach that we're the government and whatever we say must go. And from that standpoint, it is disappointing, but it is understandable because they have a Marxist history, a communist history. They've never had a history of parliamentary democracy, and therefore that is what they know: totalitarianism, authoritarianism, and democracy is like bad news for them, except when they have the majority. But a parliament is not only the government, it's also the opposition. In large measure, I think the opposition can do much more. The opposition can do much more. And here is where I worry. As an opposition, you have to pursue your parliamentary activity, but you also have got to pursue extra parliamentary activity to bring pressure to bear on Parliament to achieve your objectives. For instance, the minute the President said, that, look,
Remember, my question up so far was, how do you rate the parliament? So
well, I will rate it when I'm through, because you see, if I rate it without saying what I'm saying, then I'm in trouble. The opposition doesn't do the kind of extra parliamentary work to bring pressure to bear to the government. And so when I look at the two, Parliament is disappointing, because I think there is scope for the opposition to do much more work and bring much more bills. For instance, I thought they would have brought back the bill on torture and have the legislation on torture, so we put that behind our backs. There are a number of areas I thought that they can bring bills. And then when the president says he's not assenting to bill, if you're a well-organized opposition party, the president will have no peace in front of office of the president. You will take the actions to bring pressure to bear to ensure you achieve your objective.
Ms. Riehl is suggesting that the opposition should have, despite what the president said, which was indeed that's factual. The opposition should not have allowed the matter to rest there, and therefore the opposition has to take some of the blame, because, as Mr. Norton is suggesting, saying, the opposition is in the majority in the National Assembly.
Yes, but what action can they take? I mean, in normal countries, the only thing that they can do in a situation, because basically the president is saying that he is not interested in the will of the people. Well, then the will of the people should dictate that they are not interested in the president or in the government, which means that they need to file a motion of no confidence, which means that the government will then either have to dissolve and go back to elections or resign. I don't know if the opposition wants to take that sort of measure, but short of that, I don't really see.
But if they can't get anything, if the president said, whatever you do, I'm not going to go, what's Parliament there for then?
Well, that is the question.
No, I'm asking the question.
Well,
just go there?
It's a talking shop.
Okay.
And one hope that after the last elections it would cease to be a talking shop.
Well, you're suggesting
it still is a talking shop.
It is a talk shop, because let us face it, in this country we don't seem to want to face reality. We have a cabinet government, and we've always had that, even when the government had a majority in the parliament. I mean, what it does is just get whatever bill they want passed. But really,
the word
it's a
rubber
cabinet.
stamp used to be used.
Yeah, exactly. And they still do it, because the Constitution allows them. And no matter how great the opposition is, or how many members it has in surplus over the governments, the Constitution says the party with the highest number of votes gets the government, gets the presidency and the cabinet. And we have cabinet government. We've always had it since this government came into being, and even before. But alas, we need the constitutional change. But the question is how we will get that. That is the big question. How do we get, unless the opposition can get 2/3 majority?
Is the snake created, or the monster created by the PNC, turning back to bite it? In terms of the Constitution that Ms. Riehl is talking about?
Well, I don't know that it's a monster, but I would say to you that there are provisions within the Constitution that I think need changing. The circumstances would have changed.
Not very significant changes. Are you talking about?
I'm talking about significant change.
Well, that must
You
be.
see, one has to look at context. When that Constitution was put in place, it was assumed all the major political parties were socialists and that they were going in that direction. The society has since changed. All the political parties have proclaimed to have changed their philosophy. And it is from that standpoint, I think there is need for constitutional reform. But mere constitutional reform wouldn't do it.
Well, let's take there, and then we come back this way. The PNC, through the APNU, went into the November 28 elections on a very strong, and some would say attractive, platform of constitutional reform. How has it performed in that regard?
Well, I make the point First of all, I don't necessarily agree that that was the base of the PNC.
I didn't say it's a base. I said it was a strong
To me-
element.
To me, the strongest thing in the PNC platform in the last election was a national front, national unity government. I think the PNC, APNU.
Did they ask for? Didn't they say, "Please help me"? That constitutional reform would
Yes,
be.
yes,
that was a
said-
plank. That was a
Absolutely,
plank.
absolutely.
Yes, it was one of the
Aubrey.
planks. I'm not suggesting it wasn't, but I was saying the main plank they went on is this unity. Now, I think once you ended up with a minority government, they didn't attempt to bring the changes that are required. My own view is that the APNU should develop a platform consistent with the president's position, which allows them to bring changes to the constitution, changes to the laws to ensure that the government is compelled to comply with the decisions of parliament.
I don't know how they will how they will achieve that.
Well, I can tell you
Aubrey,
simply.
tell me.
You see, I
Well,
think.
no,
I-
you wanted you were going to
But
please.
no, I said I don't know how they will achieve that because the changes in the constitution that are required, we might be mindful of the fact that we had some constitutional changes at the turn of the century.
That's correct.
Right, but we had very good people on both sides.
And we had
of
good
the-
opportunities
and
as well.
good
Exactly.
opportunities.
They-
But that is the forum that they ought to have seen because these things were not, hidden on the bushel or on the anything else. They ought to know what was required at that stage, and they did nothing about it. So I find it very difficult. I don't know how they will achieve these changes that perhaps
Aubrey's going to tell us.
could
Yeah.
develop.
Before we get there,
perhaps you
Aubrey,
could develop
be-
how we
before-
could possibly make those changes that would.
We were talking about Parliament, so let's stick to that. We also had disappointment.
Yeah.
There must have been a couple of high points. What were they?
Well, there were high points which quickly became low points. And one in particular was, I nearly said Winston Murray, forgive me. It was Carl Greenwich's motion regarding national assets. And I really thought that that was going to be a breakthrough in the sense that the Minister of Finance would have been compelled to tell the nation how the government disposes of national assets. So I thought it was a very good motion. And what happened to that? It got absolutely nowhere. So to me, the Parliament had some false starts. There were good starts, but they ended up being false starts, many of them.
In fact, and I will ask you to answer this one on the same issue. It seems things have got worse. There's this gentleman, Mr. Winston Brassington, who now seems to be a complete law unto himself.
Exactly.
How do you is that that's not what Winston Murray or Carl Greenwich, sorry, would have intended.
No, not at all. But then the question is, how do you deal with that? If someone says, no, I'm not going to give you the information. I mean,
Well,
that is why I say Guyana is not really a normal country.
It's not a true democracy.
You know,
But we
it's
have-
not-
but
but I
then-
think we're in the problem we're in because you and I put the three of you together are seeing change based only on parliamentary action. You're not going
Because
to
we're
get-
talking
No,
about Parliament now.
I
didn't see
It's been
change.
discussing
Yeah.
Parliament now.
Yeah.
We're discussing
I know you
the
discussing
performance of Parliament.
I know you discussing Parliament, but Parliament is innocuous if it is not
Well,
backed.
tell me, no, let's get back to the question. What do you see, Aubrey, as the high point? Hamley said the motion by Mr.
I think the
Carbonesh.
motion and the general thing on finances, and I do believe that one of the goodest things this parliament did was expose the level of corruption and lawlessness. Notwithstanding the fact you weren't able to sanction and get decision, it has brought the Guyanese people to the point where they recognize what the government is doing. So the government has been exposed by the parliament. The
But-
government has been
but,
exposed by people like you as well. Hold a minute. Now, in normal democracies, governments will have shame and they would want to resign. You're dealing with a government that has no shame.
we still talking about a high point. Clarissa, your
no,
idea.
but no,
Your example of a high point.
I say, no, my high point. Well, I agree that Carl has been doing, I think, a magnificent job in the Parliament. Mr. Greenwich, I have to give him credit for all the things, because all the areas that have been exposed, and I think he's a very fine parliamentarian. And if it weren't for him, the Parliament would have been a real deader than dead.
So there's no point discussing another point.
No. So I think that, as I said, that Carl been doing a good job. But the aspect of what Aubrey keeps saying, that you have to take parliamentary. You said we must focus a little more on the Parliament. Okay,
Just
let's
for this
go back.
short
Let's
segment.
go back. Let's go back to Mr. Brassington. I know we have 4 oversight committees. I don't know whether Mr. Brassington has been hauled before any of them as yet. But if the Parliament was working, those committees, because the government of the day used to tout that how we are such a developed Parliament that we have these committee system. In the whole of the Caribbean, I don't think other parliaments have 4 working committees that oversight all of the government's, all aspects of government administration. And yet, we keep highlighting these malfeasance or whatever of the government, and we are not pulling these people ought to be brought before these committees and exposed to the public, and pressed and get answers. Those are some of the things. But then ultimately, as Aubrey keeps saying, these things, the government does not appear to be bothered by whatever activity you do in these forums when they know that they hold the strings of power or the ropes of power. The thing, look at this story with Mr. Home Affairs Minister. You had said, or somebody had said earlier, that Hamley, I think, that if the government does not understand the fact that the people did not vote for them overwhelmingly, if they do not fully understand that, and they don't have any shame and all that, look at how they behave with Mr. Roy. If they would not, the norms in a democratic society is that if no confidence is passed in the government, they ought to resign. I don't think the Constitution, I think it may have some rule to that effect. If no confidence is brought against the whole government.
The government, 106, yes 106.
Yes.
But the opposition didn't go that route.
No, I know they didn't go that route. Perhaps they themselves are not prepared for a new election. But what I'm saying, the fact that even one minister, you brought a no confidence vote in one minister and they didn't do, the government showed, no interest in even reshuffling. And as I understand it, the opposition was not saying, get rid of Mr. Roy altogether. They said, put him in a different portfolio, give him another ministry. But the government showed its disdain and didn't do a thing about it. So I wonder if the no confidence vote.
No, but
seek to ignore that.
No, you can't ignore a no confidence vote.
What will happen?
You must have elections within.
Go to the court, Mr. Ram.
Well,
if you pass
the Constitution provides for a vote of no confidence,
yes.
And elections must be held within 90 days.
Mm-hmm.
That's the Constitution. Okay, let's leave Parliament for now.
You make it sound as though they don't violate the Constitution.
Oh, that's what I was going to
we're
tell
talking about a
him.
no confidence.
Yeah, you think they would.
As we look to see the players, how the PPP and the government, how have they performed?
The PPP in this period, I think, is merely trying to brave it out one. They're trying to steamroll. And I think they recognize that the society has all the information, that they are superlatively corrupt. And therefore, I think the PPP at this point is holding on to government, seeking to protect itself, and ensure. I'm one who don't believe they call in any snap election. And the reason I think they wouldn't call a snap election, the ground is telling them that they wouldn't get a majority. They have too many corrupt people who will worry as to what will happen if they are out of power. So they are at the point where they are holding on to power regardless. And the approach in Parliament is a manifestation of this approach of what matters here is power. The classic Machiavellian, whatever we do, the end will justify the means. And that's the approach.
Ms. Riehl, you're an attorney at law. The President, and indeed every member of Parliament, is sworn to uphold the Constitution. How has the PPP in government dealt with the Constitution and operated?
Well, you know, I can't recall a lot of specifics of how many times they flaunted, but I was in the Parliament from the 6th to the 10th to the 1992 till 2011. I don't know, 5th or 6th, right down to 9th. Yeah, 4 parliaments, and I know that they've corrected that, but they used to have Mr. Buduman Prasad, deceased, as their leader of government business, and no matter what you told them. It's only, I think, the last parliament, or the one before the last, that they corrected that and put the prime minister as leader of the government business. But I'm sure there are other aspects of the Constitution. I don't know. I've turned my mind out a lot from those things since I'm not currently there.
Procurement Commission is
Since
an
I'm
obvious
not
one.
currently there. Huh?
Not particularly
Local government
Local
elections.
government elections,
Those
yeah.
are important.
No, but those are important bills, but how have they abridged the Constitution?
No, well, this is what I'm asking you. I'm asking
Yeah,
you to rate them
they're
against the
not-
background of constitutional compliance.
Oh, well, I don't know. The Constitution said local government elections should be held every 3 years. So, 3 years? Is it 3 years?
3 years.
3 years. But
The
that's what
Constitution
we
itself,
had.
the municipal
Local,
and
municipal.
yes, Local Government
Every-
Elections Act specify the 3 years.
3 years.
The Constitution provides you must have local government elections.
Yeah, yeah. Well, you know, when we came into office, when the PNC came into office, they used to, I remember year after year, they would bring a bill to the Parliament to extend the life of the current municipality and that sort of thing. And then when you tell them, you know, anything, they say, oh, you all didn't hold local government elections for how many years prior to that? So the PPP, everything in those earlier parliaments that you brought to the fore, they would say, oh, you're guilty of the same
But no,
thing.
but Miss-
No, I know, I'm just coming.
The point I'm going to
come.
make is that the opposition voted for the same thing under the last 2 years to postpone elections. They did.
That
Because
was
it has to be
only-
done annually.
What had to be done annually is the extending the life.
Yes,
of
that's what I
the-
mean.
of the-
So you keep doing it
You
more
keep
every year.
doing it, but now all the lists have been exhausted on all of these things because it's so long overdue. Since 1997 it ought to have happened.
Yeah.
And it's so long overdue that all the lists for all the NDCs and the ministers have been exhausted. There are no more people, so if a person dies or goes away or something,
The
nobody
Minister
left
of Local
on the
Government,
list.
it really subverts
Yes.
the system, doesn't
It
it?
does,
Yes,
it
it
does.
clearly
The whole
does.
system is subverted because of this inordinate
Well,
delay. But the back to the why the opposition, I think, voted for it, because the local government reform committee, there were 2 aspects of it they kept it long outstanding. 2 most important aspects, you know, Aubrey. It's the procurement.
No.
Government Commission.
The local
The
government,
government commission.
The finance,
taking away
the
some,
allocation
and
of
the
resources.
allocation
Of
of
resources,
resources.
that's
Those
correct.
were 2 sticking points, the most important points, and the whole process stalled there. So the opposition was hoping to get those 2 items in, because no point saying you have the reform.
So we've now got, we don't
so
quite have
now-
them in. Mr. Ramatara has refused to sign.
Yeah, well,
But you know,
see,
but
that
the
is-
worst thing that
yeah.
happened to the local government system hasn't been mentioned. I think people miss that prior to 2012, NDCs fell under the control of RDCs, Regional Democratic Councils. In 2012, the government rescinded that decision, and under the present local government minister, NDCs now fall under the central government. I gather.
Which is what Ms. Riehl was saying. That's the subversion.
Yeah, but what I'm saying.
It's almost.
What I'm saying. No, I'm
No.
going to make another point. A day in this week, one of the NDCs over the river reported that they have 3 staff members. They have taken away granting leave. And they just get a call from central government saying 2 people going on leave and 1 person left, And
That's a subversion. That's a
Yeah, yeah.
subversion. How would you rate them, the PPP government?
Well, again, there are huge areas of disappointment where I'm concerned, and one of them that bothers me a lot is something that's really going to take Guyana into a different dimension within a few months, which I'm sure you're aware of, and this is the money laundering, the anti-money laundering, and
Countering the financing of terrorism.
What's going to happen? Because we will never meet that deadline. The government is trying hard to say that it's the opposition's fault that the legislation has not been dealt with. Now, I know because it started in a few smaller islands, people are being asked to show where the money they have in their accounts come from. They're being given 2 weeks, and if they fail to do that, their accounts are being frozen. That will happen in Guyana. What is also going to happen here is that remittances will slow down and will become a lot more expensive. Correspondent banks that deal with our main commercial banks will charge a lot more for money transactions. The whole thing is going to...
Or may feel uncomfortable dealing with Guyana.
They will feel, because...
That's a risk they take, yes.
Our transactions are small on an international basis, and they're not going to take that level of headache trying to scrutinize Guyana penny ante transactions and not, be paid properly for it. In some cases, they will probably have to have small departments dealing with these transactions that are borderline.
But Chris, when we're looking at the PP government, we have to put the Jagdeo era in a category by itself.
Yes,
it was the most destructive.
Well, we talk about this parliament.
But this parliament, you see,
I think part.
Let me make this point before you.
Sure.
A lot of the problems of this parliament, which gives the government no flexibility, is what they have to hide from the last.
Yeah.
And to that extent, I'm saying the things that Jagdeo and Brazenton did would have generated serious problems for this parliament, because they just can't.
But surely, if you take that logic, then you have to continue doing that ad infinitum. You have to come clean at some point. You have to say some of these wishful dreams and whatever else Jagdeo conceived of, we've got to bring an end to them.
Agreed. But
You've got to. Are you saying then that you should not hold President Ramatara responsible for no local government, for the
No, I'm not saying that.
Let me finish. For the kind of things that are going on with the public funds, because Jagdeo set the stage?
No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying that in terms of the wider changes that are required in Parliament, let's assume the PPP Ramatara wants to compromise. He cannot afford to compromise, because they would have done so much ill that if he compromises...
Well, let me ask you, how would you deal with that then? How would you suggest? Are we stuck then in that?
Situation.
You have to move out of that situation.
I said in an article a while back that he has to make a complete cut and change.
That's what we're saying.
But what
You
I'm saying,
say he can't.
what I'm saying to you, in the nature of political parties and the political culture, it's not going to happen.
Is President Ramatara a prisoner of Jagdeo?
Well, to a certain extent, I agree with Aubrey. But then, as I said, if you want to help the president along, that's why I said the opposition leader should try to ingratiate himself with the president and try to. This is an area, okay, rather than shutting down the government, not passing the financial
money
laundering amendment to the money laundering bill and that sort of thing, that if go talk with him, that we be prepared to pass the thing. If you do, let us start doing these trade-offs, and and perhaps those things would help the president himself. Because see, what you're doing, you keep fighting down and saying, well, they must do this and they must, and they're on the. I mean, I'm not an advocate for the government, but what I'm saying, there are many ways to kill the cat, and you can go, the leader of the opposition could go, we have a new president, and let him go and try and make some trade-off, something. If you pass these local governments, assent to these local government bills, and we have elections and all that sort of thing, then I will accede to the passing of this amendment to the money laundering bill. And we'll have to do things. I mean, that's just one example.
As we
Oh,
talk,
oh, yeah.
as we talk about
Yeah.
assessments,
And once, may I continue
Sure.
a little bit more? Because Hamley was saying that given the dire effects of not having this legislation pass, perhaps if it doesn't pass, then people in Guyana, we're pretty laid back about things, unless it begins to affect us directly. And civil society and all those people who will be affected by all the things Hamley
What's
outlined a
civil
moment
society?
ago.
We have one of those?
Well, I'm talking with people generally. I know that was Mr. Hoyt's classic response. Where is civil society? We have one of those still in the country because...
Two guys.
Because
They're sitting on the seawall.
No. But what I'm saying, perhaps if it begins to really bite the problems of not getting money flowing easily through remittances and all these kinds of things, the Guyanese will really begin to think issues. Because I don't think that until today, our Guyanese population think issues when it comes to election time and things like that. So,
have you seen any sign from President Ramatar of change on any of the critical issues, or even of style?
Well, I haven't. He's a pleasant character, and I would give him 100% for being a pleasant person.
No, I'm talking about him as a president.
But as a president, I think he is what I perhaps, and I'm not being rude, would term a resume a CV president. There's some presidents, they just want their CV to say president between year X and year Y, and that's all they want. I don't see him making any monumental difference to the political scene.
Any a quick answer as before we go on?
I still think we could goad him you could goad him in ways of trying to get him to tell, look man, you were president, you want to have a legacy.
22 months does he need
You
goading?
want to
I
have
don't-
a legacy
listen,
or something?
I don't agree with Clarissa. Donald Ramatar was the General Secretary of the PPP. Sat at the highest decision-making level in the PPP. He has been made, one of the problems he has is that he was made a president rather than struggling to become a president. He didn't, in the dynamics of the politics, became a president. He was made a president. All of those things to me commix to make him not change.
So he hasn't. Okay.
And the cabinet he has, except for little residual ones, is the same cabinet. And if you look at the power relations in the cabinet, I don't think he is totally in charge and can change.
Well,
I have a big different problem with issues like this constitution, regardless of who you take, that cloak of presidency that this constitution gives, it's very powerful. Let's move on. The APNU, because I wanted to get onto the APNU and the AFC. How have they performed?
Well, again, there are areas of disappointment. You talked about parliamentary,
Yes,
not parliamentary
and
level.
generally, both
Generally.
inside, for them now, inside and outside of Parliament.
Well, I think they've done pretty well in Parliament, with one exception. I think they spent far too long on the Riehl matter until the public got absolutely bored with the action and the debate where removal of Riehl as Minister of Home Affairs was concerned. I think that was overdone. I think they handled the budget aspect of the parliamentary debate effectively, but of course, the jury perhaps is still out on that. So, again, a mixed bag, but there were a few low points, and the Riehl one comes to mind immediately. I mean, too much time was spent on that.
But you did say, what about they're free to bring legislation, bills to the floor of Parliament. How well have they done in that regard?
Well, I think they could have done more, and I was hoping that they would have been able to do more, but I think they got stymied on the way. I mean, for instance, I go back to Carl Greenwich's bill on the assets, national assets. That took a long time to be prepared and but it didn't get anywhere.
You have a tremendous record as a businessman. Here are 26 people. This is not one person, not even the AFC with 7. Have they done enough that 26 ought to have done?
Not at all.
No, the answer to that is no. But you see, I put it this way. First of all, let us not make it look as if the APNU, one of the misconceptions they have is that the APNU,
They have, which they.
a lot of the commentators, a lot of people in the society,
Okay, go on.
and sometimes even people in the APNU and the AFC, really and truly, the opposition is only useful when they act together, which is the APNU and the AFC. Unfortunately, there are times when they act together, fortunately, and unfortunately, there are times when they don't act together. Now, having said that, I agree with you totally.
Me?
Yeah, you just said, no. I'm about to tell you what I agree with. I agree with your position that 26 or 27 didn't. I could give you some areas.
26.
The education sector is in a mess. I think the APNU should have already developed a clear policy paper and strategies and dealing with this question.
On every single issue.
On
Every single issue, education,
So everything that is
health.
bad, they've got to
I
take
mean,
some
the
of the.
greatest disaster for health minister must be Barry Ramsaran, but
who-
yet there isn't action
Who's
against
the
it.
shadow?
But I think it's George Norton. I don't remember who's the shadow.
Dr. No.
But the point I'm making to you is that each one of these sectors, the APNU should have had clear position and taking on the government on it and appearing to be the alternative government. And that's one of the problems I have with the APNU. It is not
But that's a major problem.
Correct.
If,
Yeah.
That
if
is
their
the
function,
problem. That
if
is
their
the
function
problem.
is to be
Yeah.
the alternative government, and they're not being
Yeah.
that, they're not
No, they
functioning.
need to appear to be the alternative government. So that is one thing. I also believe they can bring far more motions. When I was in Parliament, I took a motion demanding the live broadcast of parliamentary debates, which I think, if it got through, would have allowed people to see and not the editing that NCN do. I think the APNU should have taken back that motion and approve the money for NCN
And you're talking,
then let them.
You're talking here only what they should do in Parliament. Should they have allowed this NISIL, this NCN, these scandals to go on?
No, I don't think they should allow them to go on. But
But now you're getting into the extra parliamentary
that is where I
domain.
But this is part of their function.
No,
isn't it?
Parliament, the truth of the matter is, because I think you're not being fair here. I think you're not.
Okay,
being
you be fair.
They can't get it done in Parliament. By the nature of our country, by
I
the
didn't
nature of
say
the
to
political.
get
All right,
done
hold a
in
minute.
Parliament.
Hold a minute.
He said
But what
the
I'm saying
APNU
now,
is in
what
and
I'm
out
saying
of
now,
Parliament,
the
yeah.
APNU now should really be on the outside, organizing. Take Brasington. Brasington should have the hell of his life until the government gets rid of him. Because in essence, he is the fulcrum of scams in this country.
Well, I'm
It's the,
not sure.
it's the fulcrum.
But, you know,
And I choose the language so I can't be sued.
over this parliamentary recess, you get the impression that Brassington is the government.
Well,
He's penning, he's talking about all this big money and making all
You
these
see
statements
what I
and
think-
talking about we.
what I think they're attempting to do with Brasington in the press is to sanitize him, make the public accept him. And they choose this time when Parliament is out. And the opposition, both the APNU and the AFC, have not responded and gave Brasington the blows he deserves. Brasington should be treated as somebody who mishandled the resources of this country, a la Ibas Jack Dale.
But I think-
that is why I
Yes,
said.
yes.
That's why I said he should be hauled first before the committee. The whole press should be invited, and usually a committee is a microcosm of the parliament itself. So I think the public is invited, unless they decided not, unless the committees have decided not to invite the public, and that should be a starting point. Extract answers from him, on all of these issues, and then throw it open to the public. Then do the extra parliamentary things that Aubrey is talking about. But you have to deal with him.
But Ms.
And
Riehl, should we on September the 27th, I think, 2013, be facing an NCN where everybody else is shut out? Should we be able to do that
this is
22 months after?
total disregard for Parliament and for everything.
So
no matter
my
what.
question is, what should the APNU be doing in this situation?
First of all,
No, let her go.
I do.
Don't get charged for treason.
No.
Please.
You will have to come and I will not
Treason is
accept
with the
it.
government.
No,
Treason is not government.
Well, I don't know what the APNU have done. I know that
No, I'm
the
asking what they
extra
should be doing.
parliament, what the parliament, extra parliamentary things that Aubrey speak about. But I really can't give an answer as to what the opposition party should do with an entity which the government is protecting and which the government has a complete handle and control over. They have starved it out of funds and at the level of the budget, and it still persists. It vies with the private media for ads and things like that, and they still have, and their government obviously is finding ways of channeling funds
The government,
to
the
them.
government is finding ways, indeed. But recently, Mr. Joseph Harman was suggesting maybe the court is not the place to go. What then? Where should we go? Parliament is not working. The courts are not working.
Only the streets are left.
Only the streets are left because you may remember the Chief Justice has passed an order since when? How many years back that Linden should have its television station back? Has that happened?
No.
They complete disregard that the central government and the cabinet, the president and cabinet, is in complete disregard of every entity of government and otherwise in the society. What? And the people are still comfortable sitting back?
Well, no, it seems the APNU is
They're
comfortable sitting back.
fomenting.
Let me tell you how I would have done it.
Fomenting.
And I've admitted,
Yeah.
I've advised the APNU, the DFC, write NCN and say, look, we need some time, and let them refuse.
I think we've done that.
Well, no, as a
We've done
step,
that even before this.
and then, okay, so what you following this up with? You tell me, you're a street
first
man.
of all, if you do that, they will acknowledge receipt of the letter and embody it.
Okay,
I
no,
think
what
we
do you
did-
follow
we
it up?
did
What
that
do you follow it
before.
up?
I think
I'm sure we did that. Yeah,
I think the APNU should, one, start an international campaign against NCN. Two, it should mobilize people against NCN. And I tell you the various fashion I'm talking about. First, none of the journalists should be allowed in any opposition press conference.
Mhm.
Because when you allow them, you are treating them as business as usual. None of them should be allowed. And on the basis that, look, you don't cover us fairly. When the Linden crisis was on and NCN came, I told them in uncertain terms, you don't cover us fairly and I'm not speaking to you. Then you have to mobilize the support to ensure that there is no easy passage into NCN for business. And you have to mobilize other support in the press, etc., against NCN. You have nothing to lose by carrying a complete campaign against NCN. And I think it is treating NCN as if it is okay for it to exist
Doing what it
while
wants,
we
yes.
cut the money. We now need to move to enforce it by political action. Politics has always been parliamentary, and when you don't live by parliamentary rules, we use extra parliamentary rules to make you live by the rules.
The thing is that all of these things are well said and done. When you come into the area of extra parliamentary activity, you come up against something called civil society and the ordinary people.
And the private sector.
And the private sector. Well, which I lump that as part of the civil society framework. And if you should tell them, to starve NCN of ads and that's what you get work, the government will detect it and quickly apply some kind of pressure on them. And this society, we run on like fair levels.
That's
of
very
fair,
true.
you know, especially business people, and so I say, man, I know, I understand, but
Well,
you
you
know, I
got the-
can't
the
do
more
this.
you
You
and
notice
do
I
this.
didn't mention the
Yes,
private
yeah.
sector in my
The more you
Yeah.
give, the
outlay.
more you give in to an
Yeah.
autocratic behavior, to bully,
Well, that
the more
is-
you have to give in. Now
That is what the country is all about.
we moved to a very interesting part. The AFC. They have had a few bad weeks, very bad
Yeah.
weeks. how do you, their performance in Parliament and their current situation?
First, I think the AFC is in a dilemma. In the last election, a lot of its support came from the PPP. And I think they tried to feel the pulse of that support base and act. And sometimes they misread it, sometimes they read it correct. I think the last incident that really put them in trouble, which is the issue with Nigel Hughes.
Amelia.
First of all, what I advise, and I would have said to them, don't defend it. Nigel has erred, and we move on. The minute you try to defend it, I think you put yourself in a terrible position. This next point I want to make is this. At present, the AFC's leader came from the PPP. Whether you like it or not.
Leaders.
No, but I'm talking specifically about Ramjatan.
Mm-hmm.
He has a particular history.
Mm-hmm.
He has a particular historical friendship and relations. And a lot of time when he's going to make a decision, he's going to be responsive to what he perceives to be his constituency. I believe it is that kind of activity that led him in the direction of voting for the
Amila Falls.
Hamley Falls. And I think that
Really.
when the Nigel issue add to it, it went out.
Though they
Well, let me
are
finish.
pains, no, because we seem to hold, they said they did not vote for the Amila Falls project. The Amila Falls project never came to the National Assembly. They voted for raising a ceiling, which was tied to the Amila, in order to get
guarantee.
the IDB, yes, the debt guarantee,
Yeah.
in order to get the IDB study to move forward, because they wanted an independent study. That's their explanation.
When you're making political decisions, you have to make the decisions taking into consideration what occurred before. And based on what occurred before, they attempt to split it into two neat compartments, didn't work, and people are of the perception that they voted for the project. A lot of time in politics, perception matters more than reality. I think they're facing the situation where people are of the perception that they can't be trusted on these issues. I believe that they made a mistake in terms of voting, because the truth of the matter is, put everything aside. Now let us recognize.
Please,
Well,
because I
quickly,
want, yes.
put everything aside. All of us agree that there's need for hydropower. Where the disagreement is that particular deal appears to be corrupt and will serve not this country, a few individuals.
AFC, we're talking about AFC.
Well, I think the AFC as a small party has done well for itself. This is only the second time around that it's in Parliament as all the participants, some of them were there before, But what all of what Aubrey has said is true. The bill that was before the Parliament had nothing specific to do with Amalia, but it was generally to do with hydropower in Ghana. That's what I understand it. I haven't studied or read. As a matter of fact, I have put up a little wall against what's happening generally in the Parliament. But I feel that, they've gone through a rough patch yet, but I don't think that is a patch that they can't, surmount at some stage in the future, because Nigel is a good person. And I don't know, the conflict of interest thing, it stands out.
You
because
think-
it's
you
not
think-
only, but, and I think that's why they voted to retain him, even though, it was a mistake.
You think society judged Mr. Nigel Hughes too harshly, given that Mr. Hughes did such a splendid job in that Jagdeo Kissoon libel case,
I think-
and swung
I
a lot of views?
I think the press, not society so much, like the press came down like a ton of bricks on him. Because I don't think the average person who votes for the AFC, I don't think it matters much to them. And they mightn't even understand for sure what is conflict of interest. He has a job as a lawyer, and he has a job, in the political party. So the fact that he didn't, it's easy. I've seen political parties ride more severe storms than that and came out bright and shining on the other side. I mean, there's not a corruption issue or anything like that. I mean, we have people in power right now who can't stand any real scrutiny. What they're there as ministers and all kinds of things.
And the press
If
is
you were
not
to
coming
throw,
down on
and the
them.
press can't come down on them for fear of all kinds of things. We've had all kinds of things. I heard that there are people who are not even Guyanese citizens, really and truly speaking, who hold ministerial positions. The Constitution says, you asking for examples of breaches of the Constitution, that you have to be a Guyanese. And
Yes.
before you become an MP and all of that.
Or you,
But
or
so
you
they
shouldn't,
have.
you shouldn't be holding a
And you
passport
shouldn't
for
be
that.
holding
Yeah,
all
yeah.
kinds of things
Yeah.
like that. So,
Miss-
you know,
Mr. Case?
Which question?
AFC. We talked about
Oh,
AFC.
well, I think I agree with everything that's been said about the AFC. I think they've done a wonderful job in a very limited period of time. What bothers me is where they go from here. I find that on occasions they make categorical statements of intent, which to me in politics is not the thing to do. And the most recent one is a statement that came out that they would never join forces with the
Pre-election
APNU,
forces, I think you said, no?
pre-election.
pre-election forces. I don't think those sweeping statements should be made because, as someone once said, a day in politics is a long time. Things can change. Again, I'm going back to what Aubrey said. I think they're playing up to their constituency because they believe that their constituency
Is that
has a
not-
pathological
Yeah.
hatred
Isn't that
of the
common
PNC.
among all our political parties?
That is
The
what I was
APN,
going to
PNC
say.
plays up its
Everybody
role,
plays
the
up its
PPP
own
does.
constituency.
No, let
Yeah.
But that pathological hatred of the PNC, I'm not so sure it is as alive and well as people in the AFC believe it is to make that kind of categorical statement. To me, they
No, but they did not. They said they were not going to align with either PPP or
Yeah.
PNC.
Yeah,
They
they're
didn't. They didn't
I
single
know.
out.
I know they.
So it's not
Even
that.
in today's
No,
paper,
but-
I see a big
yeah.
picture of Mr.
Yeah.
Gasket, Mr. Granger's son-in-law, saying they would always hold it to
Yeah.
their own party.
Look, AFC is a young political party that needs to learn.
Well, I think that's
That
what
in
I'm
politics, absolute statements put
Yeah.
you in absolute trouble.
Yeah, that's what.
That's the
what-
first point of view. The second point I want to make is as it relates to Nigel Hughes. I worked with Nigel Hughes in the Linden crisis. I think he's a fine intellect. I think he's a potential leader. I believe that he erred.
And he said sorry.
Yes, and I believe the press overreacted, people reacted, and all political parties that in politics, once somebody err, the APNU will act on it, the PPP will act on it, because it's the nature of politics. But I think what Nigel needs to do is to sit down, recuperate, and come again, because he is a potential leader.
Let's move on. We've
Yeah.
got about 6 minutes, I think. As Parliament reconvenes, what are we looking towards as we look towards 2016, or even shorter horizon? Parliament reconvenes. What are we expecting? What are you expecting?
Go it again, I missed the key point.
What are you expecting with the reconvening of Parliament? And I know you think that the APNU, everybody should be taking action both inside and outside of the National Assembly.
I expect them to continue like they operated before.
That's
business
not,
as usual.
I have seen no signs. You ask me, of
Yeah,
course, you have to
I'm
be
always
factual.
thinking that more of the same.
Yeah.
Unless I see, if I'm sitting down here and I hear
I
that.
hope my viewers are a little bit more inspired.
When I walk around the society,
Yeah.
I hear people say, well, the APNU and the AFC talking to me to help in the mining sector, to help in the education sector. And I gain the impression that they put together an alternative strategy, and I feel that there's mobilization on the ground. Then I will feel optimistic. As it stands, it appears to me to be business as usual.
And you're talking all three political parties in National Assembly.
No, two, the AFC
And
and the
APNU.
APNU.
Yeah.
But the information on the PPP is that they're going back to the bottom house doing work. So they're slightly different. What I think is a problem with the PPP is that the boat really done gone far.
Ms. Riehl,
I-
are you more optimistic than Mr.
Not
Norton?
at all. I was thinking, well, I mean, you asked the question, and I was going to give a one sentence, more of the same. But But if they take cognizance of some of what Aubrey said, it's time they start presenting papers. It's time they bring a couple more bills that are useful to the society. For instance, since I was there, I was talking, and we were talking about the idea of passing a bill to do with hire purchase, because we have very horrible hire purchase legislation. Myself and Basil Williams, and I think Debbie to an extent, were talking about bringing a bill, but we are going to bring it in the same fashion that the Speaker, then MP, had brought the bill on, but he had brought a bill on which languished until they actually passed one.
Freedom of information.
Freedom of information he had brought in. But so it was going to be an exercise in futility then. But now they could perhaps bring a bill on hire purchase. For instance, if I buy this thing from you, I can pay 9/10 of the price, and if 1/10 is outstanding, the person could come and take it back, and I forfeit my thing on it. So they could bring more bills, they could do more papers on their decrying needs, and Mr. Granger said the things they would do.
Campaign finance. Are you as pessimistic? And can you answer this question? Are you looking forward to some campaign financing and some reform of political parties? Are you hopeful in any of those areas, critical areas?
Yes, but there are other things I'd like to see as well, and perhaps before they deal with campaign financing. Freedom of Information Act is one that's very important. Every single modern...
We have one.
We have one. The
We have
government passed
one. We have a Commission of Insurance.
government, yeah.
Nobody is using it because it's such a poorly drafted piece of legislation. So we have one.
And then you take a PPP person and put them rather than somebody independent.
My understanding
A
is in 3
commission
months.
of information.
in 3
You
months,
said insurance?
yes.
Information, you mean?
In 3 months, nobody has asked a
No
single
answer.
question.
No, wrong.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah,
no, so we have
because it's
that.
political,
What else?
yeah.
Okay. We can take that one off.
I think the question is, what would I like to see?
Yes. What are you looking forward to?
What I'm looking forward to and what I would like to see is an end to the confrontation at the level that we have the parliamentary confrontation, and look for more consensus. And I think key to that would be the two leaders getting together informally from time to time, which soon after the last elections they both intended to do, I know for a fact, but then things went helter-skelter.
Okay, so what are you likely to see now that you've said what you would like to see? What are you likely to see?
Well, more of same, I'm afraid. But I hope I'm wrong. One of those occasions when I hope I'm wrong.
Let's bring civil society. Now, don't ask me who is civil society. What would you like to see civil society do?
First
including an Aubrey Norton, including a Hamley Case,
I mean,
including...
I
Clarissa Riehl, because you all know
I
out of active
I
politics.
can't go against what I have in written articles in journals. I wrote in at least one journal that civil society in Guyana is either non-existent or exceptionally small to the point where they're innocuous. Now, I don't know what we call civil society, but my understanding of civil society is that they pursue the interests of civil society. What you have is appendages of the government, people who are afraid of the government, and they appear to be civil.
No, I was asking, what do you expect them to do now?
To continue to do just what I'm saying. They will continue to be appendages of the government, pursuing, particularly in the business sector, conditions for the private business to occur, and don't care what happened with the citizenry.
Ms. Riehl.
That, I used to hear this statement that politicians are like prostitutes, But I think
I've heard it too.
I think our
I wouldn't know.
civil society. I think our civil society are like not only prostitutes only, but kept women. In the sense that
you have
they
you've just painted the entire Guyana. It's not politicians, it's civil society.
Because they just hang their mouths and they're afraid to come out. They're afraid, everybody in our society. That's the great sadness of this small society. Everybody is afraid, of sacrificing anything.
I'm going to ask you
for
one
the public
element.
good, for the public good.
I'm going to ask you one element of civil society. You use that, the press, the media.
Mm.
How do you feel about them?
Well, I think that they're doing a pretty good job. But again, the government is not allowing them to act like they normally do in other countries. And I'll give you
Isn't it true that we have a very, very free press? In fact, it's probably too free.
Let me ask
Yeah,
you.
We got about 60 seconds. Quickly, if you want to. So don't take the 60 seconds, Aubrey.
This press is an amazing press. You know the case of the girl who was wanted, who was working with a particular company?
Not political.
You think if this press was a serious press, that would have passed?
And I will tell you a little story.
You've got 15 seconds.
For some obscure reason, the person who delivers papers to my house didn't deliver last Sunday, and I went out in my car looking for a kite show news. And I went to about 15 outlets that told me they don't carry the kite show news because it's an anti-government paper and they don't want to get into trouble. That is what Guyana is today.
You have the last, say, 10 seconds, the press.
What I think of the press? The press is just like the rest, just reflect the rest, the society that we live in. It just reflects the society we live in.
On Plain Talk this evening, we had Mr. Aubrey Norton, Ms. Clarissa Riehl, both former MPs aligned to the PNC. Mr. Hamley Case, I'm not sure where you are, but civil society.
The only civil society person
Aubrey,
in Guyana.
Thank you, good night, see you next week.